Witcher Blood Origin. Well, this was episode 3. How was it?
My bad. How was it though, homie? Man, what you think? How was it?
What nice can I say about Blood Origin? Well, at least it had the good taste to only be 4 episodes long, and this one may well be the worst episode of the lot, so brace yourselves. And where did I leave off last episode? Well, the Lark was about to be eaten by a hellbeast, some centipede anglerfish sort of thing, and how on earth are they going to resolve this intense boss battle? Well, they bravely run away and go through a portal, which shuts after them while the beast is halfway through it, cutting the beast in half. And that's it, it was a total anticlimax. Through the portal, and the Lark's group end up back on their own world, which is an enormous stroke of luck, seeing as they ended up on a random planet last time they tried using a portal, and this is where they just happened to run into Meldoff the dwarf.
A dwarf.
They come out of the portal and she's thus there, and what a stroke of luck again. The whole plot runs entirely on lazy contrivance, like last episode with Brother Death, who just happened to find the Lark's group by accident, just happened to want to join them, just happened to know a healer who could help poisoned Cyan, and the healer just happened to have a brother who could be extremely useful to them because he was an expert on portals. And why write like this? This is frankly an insult. How about, just off the top of my head, instead of all that rubbish, how about the portal guy realises he's made a mistake in teaching evil wizard Lenny Henry about portals, and he wants to set the world right. He hears of the Lark and Fiol, of them being alive and on the run, so he sends Brother Death to find them, so they can maybe work together to set things right. And you get to entirely the same place without the need for 4 massive coincidences. And it's not so much that this plot has holes in it, there seems to be more hole than plot. You may have noticed by now that we're hardly dealing with Shakespeare here, so after the Lark's group come through the portal, they land on Meldoff, who's gesticulating wildly. She's trying to warn them that they're about to get killed by evil wizard Lenny Henry's hellbeast that is currently circling overhead, and she wants to help them for some unstated reason. And Meldoff just lifts a line verbatim from the Terminator.
Ballow's beast.
Come with me if you want to live.
I was already annoyed and laughing at this stupid show within a couple of minutes of it starting and before the title screen even dropped, which is quite the achievement. Meldoff the dwarf takes the heroes to the place she's staying. But didn't she just come to this area? What even was Meldoff's journey across this continent? What even is the timeline? Because none of this seems to add up. When did Meldoff find the time to provision and fit this place out? Also, Meldoff knows the Lark, because of course she does. Everybody on the continent knows the sodding Lark. She also knows the whole story of the Lark's group. She knows where they've been and what their goal is somehow. She learnt all of this off camera. Somehow, word has moved faster than their group, despite them taking a portal to get here. And how did that happen? The Lark's group travelled here instantaneously, but somehow word of mouth got here before they did. And now safe in the hideout, the Lark's group at this point for the first time try to come up with a plan. And the plan they come up with is, first thing, they need to defeat Lenny Henry's flying hellbeast. They also need an army, because currently there are 7 of them, and that's somewhat less than they need to topple an empire and take a city. Brother Death chips in, suggesting that they feed the hellbeast a poisoned sheep, and the rest of the group look at him like he's a fool, despite the fact that the plan they ultimately go with is far more stupid than the one he just proposed. The plan they go with is when Portal Guy suggests that they need to create their own beast to fight Lenny Henry's hellbeast. Portal Guy wants to mutate one of their group to become that beast, and he says it will probably end their life. and I would have maybe given the poison sheep plan a try first. At least they would all probably survive that, even if it didn't work. Luckily, Portal Guy just happens to know the exact right spell to make this mutation happen, and it just so happens that what he needs for that spell is the heart of the centipede anglerfish thing. And what a stroke of luck. The portal that took their group to a random location just happened to take Lark's group to a world that contained the creature Portal Guy would need for the spell, entirely by accident, because Portal Guy didn't even know he needed the thing's heart yet. And also, the random world that they got taken to, they just happened to land right next to the creature that they needed. It happened to chase them, it happened to get caught in the portal and cut in half, and luckily the bit of the animal they needed landed on their side of the portal. And all of this would have made far more sense if Portal Guy had just done all of this on purpose. And this is why I think this show is even worse than the Rings of Power. It's complete nonsense. From my perspective, it would have been far better if Portal Guy had had the plan of creating a mutant from the start and took Lark's group to that world intentionally to get the heart he needed for the plan. We're 4 minutes into this episode, including the title screen, and at this rate, this episode is going to finish me off. I'm genuinely not sure I can take it. This episode is 51 minutes long, and lately I seem to be watching pure, unadulterated garbage. Last night, I took a chance on a film that I've never seen in the hope of watching a sexy vampire Olga Kurylenko, and instead I ended up watching Vampire Academy. In short, I did not enjoy the film Vampire Academy. In its defence, I'm really not sure I was the target audience. Witcher Blood Origin, and where did I leave off last time? Well, I was ragging on the film Vampire Academy because it's awful and didn't even have any sexy vampire Olga Kurylenko in it, and despite being painful, it was still maybe better than Blood Origin, because Blood Origin's entire plot runs on contrived nested coincidences, like running into Brother Death last episode, a man with useful skills, who just happened to want to join them when he found out what their mission was. He just happened to have a girlfriend, who just happened to be a healer, who could heal their poisoned friend, and the girlfriend happened to have a brother who's the world's leading expert on portals, and is the one who taught evil wizard Lenny Henry, and he can portal them, he says, to Sintra, but they happen to take a wrong turn and end up on another planet, where they get attacked by a monster, and this monster is the exact thing that they need for the rest of Portal Guy's plan, the plan to create a mutant monster using magic on one of their group, in order to fight Lenny Henry's flying eye death laser hell beast. And if to you that sounds like complete nonsense, the answer is yes. At first, Portal Guy wants to merge the beast's power with his own in order to gain its power. He needs the mighty power of that beast that the Lark's group killed instantly with a portal. And the healer is unhappy with the whole mutant idea. Portal Guy, it seems, has a history of dodgy experiments, including trying to reanimate Healer's deceased mother, and I gather it did not go well. Fionn and the Lark suggest that one of them has to get turned into the monster instead, for no stated reason whatsoever. They don't even know if it will work on one of them, because it wasn't their plan, but they're still modifying a plan that they don't even understand, so the group splits up to find the ingredients required for the mutation. They need herbs and the heart of the dead anglerfish centipede thing, and Fionn and the Lark are both arguing about which one of those two it should be that gets changed. The Lark thinks it should be her, because when she was in the Raven clan she burnt a family alive on orders from her king. And these are the heroes of our show, everyone. In fact, both Fionn and the Lark were in the clan. Well, they were both in a clan, and Fionn and the Lark have decided now that they love each other. And when did that happen? And spoiler, it didn't. This is completely unearned. The show has at no point even shown them having a moment. No stealing glances at each other, no checking each other out, no moments of reluctant admiration. They were trying to end each other not so long ago, and now they're willing to die for each other on the basis of nothing. And because the Lark thinks that the serum that she's going to take may kill her, all of them have a party and get drunk, because what better way to prepare for battle than to be really hungover? Genius! And this is where things get silly. Well, sillier, you see, because Sian only agreed to come along after Fuel told her that he knew a secret way into Sintra and the palace, because otherwise an attack would be hopeless, and now she wants to know from him where the secret way in is. Fuel, now drunk, tells her that he was lying all along. He doesn't and never did know a way in at all, and Sian storms off in a huff. And Fuel tells her this like he expects her to find it funny. Meldoth tells Brother Death the tragic story of her and her hammer. Brother Death shares how he met the healer, and the Lark starts singing again. The Lark and Fuel then go off together and drink and sing some more, and they kiss, and the camera mercifully fades to black. But don't think that's going to save you from a naughty scene. That, among other things, is coming later, so brace yourselves for some unappealing grinding while wearing cheap prosthetic Spock ears. The Lark wakes in the morning alone, and Fuel has taken her place and has taken the monster elixir, and they do it again. They just drop in lore terms while never explaining them, with lines like,
as this trial of the grasses began to take its brutal toll on Fial.
The trial of the grasses is a step in making someone into a witcher. They take a load of special potions to make them more resilient and give them better reflexes, that sort of thing. It's done to young boys, and in the lore, it has a 30% survival rate. And here is where I really start to hate the show. It's a conversation between Meldoth and Brother Death, and the writers just straight up put their politics into the show. And it's intersectionalism again for a change. You see, Meldoth holds Brother Death responsible not for what he's done, but for what the elven race did in the past. And I fundamentally disagree with this principle. The principle of holding an entire group responsible for the perceived wrongs of some is viewing people as collectives and not as individuals. And it's that thinking that the mustachioed Austrian painter used to justify attacks on the Jewish population of Europe. Assigning guilt and innocence based on skin colour or immutable traits is lazy, fascistic and horribly ill-advised, and I can tell you where that ideology ends, because there's nothing new here. If all of the elves are guilty, even the ones that did nothing, just by virtue of birth, that includes the children too. And this at its core is tribalism, and this is the mentality that logically ends up with Anne Frank in an attic, scared for her life, and not for anything that she'd done, but for the group that she was born into. So she had to go to Belsen and lose her life at 16 years old. There's a quote from George Carlin that comes to mind. Never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. Witcher Blood Origin, and where did I leave off last time? Well, I was talking about the worst part of the entire show for me. It was a conversation between Meldoth the Dwarf and Brother Death, and no, those names never get any less silly. The writers just straight up put their politics and words into the mouths of the characters, and just for a change, it's intersectionality and the message. And I'm not sure the message is working at this point. For starters, it does not seem to be making people more tolerant to LGBT lifestyles, as this article in Time seems to show. The article says, GLAAD, the organisation dedicated to LGBTQ advocacy in media and culture, released its 5th annual Accelerating Acceptance Index on Monday. The survey found that adults in the 18 to 34 age bracket are becoming increasingly uncomfortable around LGBTQ people. In its first 3 years of results, the index showed a steady increase in Americans who felt comfortable with LGBTQ issues and people. Last year, however, results saw a sharp drop in acceptance across all scenarios surveyed. Headlines that stated LGBTQ acceptance is eroding were a call to arms for GLAAD and so many around the country. A press release accompanying the new index explained, GLAAD doubled down on our formula for making culture change. And this for me is a baffling response, because in my lifetime we've gone from LGBTQ people asking to just be left alone to live their lives, to In Topic with Michelle Yeoh, the message now being in everything, everywhere, all at once, and it feels like a constant, smug, nagging lecture that's about as fun as being pinned in a corner by a drunk at a party that won't let you leave and won't stop talking. And the response GLAAD gives to their approach having the exact opposite response of what they wanted is to double down. So vaingloriously sure are they that their approach is correct. If the facts don't agree, then the facts must be wrong. GLAAD coming in with that solid, the beatings will carry on until morale improves energy. Meanwhile, Sian has gone to Sintra on horseback. She goes to the Empress and offers to sell her Fiol and the Lark. So she walks into the throne room and look at the throne. When did they have the time to have a custom throne made with the logo of the new empire on it? What is this timeline? How long is supposed to have elapsed since the start of this story? Hours? Days? Months? Years? I have absolutely no idea. In return, Sian wants money and her tribe's sword, as well as soldiers to help her with the capture. The Empress questions the price asked by Sian for the Lark, and Sian says she's worth it, as she is the voice of the people. Give me strength. Meanwhile, the Lark does naughty things with mutant Fiol, and there's a lot of thrusting, and afterwards Fiol says he'd end his life for the Lark, so she must be good. And this again makes me think that the writers don't even believe their own spiel. And why do I say that? Well, they show depictions of heterosexual naughtiness, they have gay characters on paper, but they don't show Eredin getting ploughed by Brian. They have a lesbian whose partner's already dead when the story begins. So creatives like having lesbian characters in their show, they just don't want to show any lesbian activities, and it's probably high time for a grown-up conversation about this stuff. And again, an adult, evidence-based conversation is probably required to work out what is or is not a good idea to put in entertainment. Sian then comes back on Meldoth's horse that she stole, saying that she scouted ahead, and Fiol has finished his transformation. So Sian makes the very logical choice, not knowing what Fiol's powers are, of throwing a blade at his face, which he luckily catches because it would have been a bit of a waste to do all of that and then have Sian just kill him. They all then march towards Sintra, and Sian leads them into a trap, a dead-end canyon where they're boxed in by the Sintran troops that came with her. But it's a double cross, and the troops are nullified by a group of mercenary archers that she got from somewhere off camera. They never really explain it. It's not even a great battle. Meldoth at the end shoots 2 fleeing men in the back with 2 arrows fired at once from one bow, which probably wouldn't even work. It would in reality drastically reduce the kinetic energy of both arrows, because you'd have double the mass being fired by the same draw weight bow. She would also be lucky to hit a barn. The mercenary leader comes down after the battle, and he's being played by the Irish comic Dylan Moran, who deserves far better than this. He was in Shaun of the Dead, and I really used to like his work. I even met him once very briefly. He was in a great little comedy series called Black Books, and I heartily recommend that. It was a fun, surrealist comedy show, and it worked well for me. Dylan Moran wrote Black Books with Graham Linehan, who did Father Ted and the IT Crowd, which if you don't know is where I got my end video clip from of Chris Morris jumping out of a window. Meanwhile in Sintra, the Empress's plot is in motion, and Avallac'h is looking for evil wizard Lenny Henry's big book of portal spells that he finds under 2 loose floorboards. With the book, Avallac'h thinks that he can make portals too, but Lenny Henry finds out and attacks him and the Empress, but is stopped when Eredin threatens Lenny Henry's deaf assistant with a knife at the throat, and Lenny Henry is captured. So Avallac'h tries to open a portal for the Empress now that Lenny Henry's out of the way. He tries and it doesn't work. So Eredin immediately wants Lenny Henry back, and none of that makes any sense. Because they already know they can't trust Lenny Henry, nor is it going to be a good way to get food, nor can they conquer other planets with the forces that they have, as one creature from one of these worlds wiped out most of their best fighters. But they stupidly let Lenny Henry out after betraying him because they now need his portals again, and they won't give Avallac'h any time to try and learn or have a second go. And who would have thunk? Lenny Henry goes on to betray them. Meanwhile, the Larks group all dress up in the defeated soldiers' armour. They're going to try and walk back into Sintra in disguise. And this is where the episode ends. And yes, it was terrible again.
Could you make me a cup of tea, please, Stephanie?